Thanks for being here today. I have a success story which I love to bring to all of you. I have Steph here. Steph, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very good. I know we just talked off air that sharing a story is sometimes a little nerve-wracking, but I'm so happy you're willing to come on and share yours. So I'm gonna turn it over to you and you can share your story with the audience.
Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me. I'm in my mid 40s and didn't hear about this work until 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm just thankful for people like you that are making videos and putting it out there so people can start to know about this more in the mainstream. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Um, like I said, I'm not usually doing interviews or things like this, and this is the first time I've talked about my story, so I may be a little nervous and looking at my notes. But the reason I decided to do this was kind of to come full circle with my story. I don't have a business or anything out of it. This I know a lot of times when people do the stories, they've made it into some type of thing to try to help people. But I just wanted to do it to put my story out there to kind of come full circle, um, put a bow at the end of my story, even though I know this is still ongoing work. But kind of because I am doing better, I wanted to put a story to kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, and help other people too, right?
Yeah, no,
That
definitely. That's why I'm doing it to help other people. Um, and also, I realized I feel like I'm still very malleable with different things. So sometimes um, I find myself not wanting to be over in it, especially now that I'm doing better and kind of living my life again. I don't want to be too malleable. So, anyways, my story kind of starts with me growing up in Midwest Indiana. Um, I kind of grew up and I always had headaches. At the time, I never knew why, but I'd always get a headache maybe once or twice a week, or maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, I'd have a headache. And I never growing up, never knew why. But as I got older, I was also kind of lucky that that was my only health thing was just headaches. I would just get headaches. And then they kind of, my mom parents took us to me to the doctor, and they said it might be the food I eat, but I never really bought into that because um, sometimes I would eat the things they said that could trigger a headache and I would be fine, and other times I wouldn't. But it is what it is. And so I kind of always had the headaches growing up. And then also growing up, um, when I was little, my mom and my sister and my friends, and I know some people relate, even though it's kind of silly, but when you're growing up, it's not silly. I was always the fair skinned kid with braces, and all my friends, I had freckles and the fair skin and would burn. And my mom and my sister and all my friends, they were always super tan and super pretty. So growing up, I always kind of felt like I stuck out more because I would always be the one with the freckles and putting sunblock on. And I had a good family and a good support system, and I had good friends, and I had my mom and dad. So I had a good childhood, but I also realized looking back that because sometimes I looked at myself as less than, I was putting more pressure on myself to be good at everything, or be the best at everything. Or um, I know I always thought I kind of had a fun personality and could make friends, but I also would find myself trying to be perfect and good at everything and be in everything. To that was my way of coping with maybe not feeling like I was as pretty as my friends, or what I thought I wasn't as pretty as my friends. And I don't know, people can probably relate. Growing up, I just didn't like the fair skin and the freckles. So um, I remember those thoughts. And then when I kind of came across this work, I realized kind of how I became a perfectionist. Um, um,
And so these headaches started, like you said, pretty young, and
yeah.
they were intermittent, but they came every so many days, right? But then they kept coming. Did you have breaks through childhood, or they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd have breaks. I'd maybe have one a week, and we never knew why. And sometimes they'd last an evening or maybe a day, and sometimes they'd be bad, sometimes they'd be okay. But life was going on, and I was still having fun. I was still making the most of my life and being okay. Um, but like I said, I always had headaches, and then as I got older and I grew up and went through high school, and then in college, I got married and had two kids. Um, And then when more of my symptoms started coming, it was when um, my two kids. It was when my daughter became a teenager, which was in 2021. I realized around 2021 I was having. That's when I started getting more headaches, and it was around the time when COVID came out. But I hadn't had COVID yet. COVID came out in 2020, I didn't get COVID until 2021. But that was around the time when my daughter was becoming a teenager, my son was a preteen, and I realized some of my insecurities from when I was a teenager, I was reliving them when my daughter became a teenager. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it kind of triggered or reminded you of your childhood.
Yeah, like I said, I had a good childhood, but it triggered some of the bad parts of the childhood when she was becoming a teenager. So it was a combination of me being a mom, having two kids that were in a lot of activities, working, and then having teenagers. All of that kind of was going on and also I want to know, I was in a job that I didn't really enjoy. It didn't fit me. It was a job that was very, very overwhelming. So around that time is when COVID came out. And actually the first day of my job at that time was when COVID came out and all the schools started shutting down. So the first day of my job, the schools
Wow.
shut down, our school shut down, and I started this new job. So that was stressful, trying to decide whether I parent my kids or go to work, um, or
Sure.
not my kids, but stay home with them. No one knew what COVID was going on, but I just started this new job. Well, I chose to keep with the job, trying to find people to watch the kids all while they're teenagers. And so it was just a perfect storm of kind of starting to feel overwhelmed in 2020. And then I was never afraid to get COVID. However, in Thanksgiving of 2021, I did contact COVID. And I remember right before I got COVID, that's when all the long COVID stories started coming out. I don't know if you remember that time
Oh,
frame.
yeah.
That's when I started hearing different videos or things on TV saying, okay, this new thing is long COVID. And if you have some of the symptoms of long COVID are headaches that don't go away. But I still wasn't afraid of COVID, but that was what came out a couple weeks. I started seeing the videos right before I got COVID. And I remember I had a boss or a lady that was on my board a couple weeks before I got COVID. She thought she had long COVID and was telling me how she wasn't going to go to different meetings and was going to try to keep it safe. And I was like, okay, yeah, I understand that. And I was telling myself I wasn't afraid of COVID, but with everything that was going on with the kids and the work and being overwhelmed, overworked, over busy, over schedulized. I remember also around that time, that's when the Kardashians were popular. And I didn't necessarily watch the Kardashians, but I also kind of remember some of the stuff in that they would showcase about being busy. I remember like, I want to be busy like a Kardashian. I want to feel busy. So I made myself almost over busy around that time. And so when I got COVID, I felt sick for a couple of days, but the night before I was getting ready to go back to work is when it all crashed. I woke up the next morning when I was going to go to work and had all kinds of symptoms. I had a headache, a pounding headache. I had dizziness. I had my legs were going out, and I woke up and I was like, what's going on? And at the time, I didn't know I had COVID. And I'm like, what are all these symptoms? What are all these symptoms? And I was panicked and laying in bed. And then I missed Thanksgiving Day. And then I remember a couple of days later, I decided to go to a med check. And that's when they said, you have COVID. And I was like, okay, yeah, okay. Um, and because I had all these other symptoms that weren't like the headache and the dizziness and all that, that's what, and because I've heard about how long COVID was, the headaches that won't go away, I just started spiraling. Um,
So you
I
already had that in your mind from before about the headaches. So pre-existing before you got COVID, you had heard about all that.
Yeah, just the few weeks before is when I started
Yeah.
hearing about the long COVID with the headaches that don't go away. And of course, when I got COVID, I got a headache, and that's when it caused all the other symptoms, and my downhill was with that. I was so scared that I was going to get long COVID, and like many of us, you don't realize that's what you're doing. You don't realize why you're in it, that it's a mind body thing. It's not long COVID. It's when I was well over the virus, I still had the headache. I still had these other symptoms, and it was panicking me and panicking my family. And it went on a while. It went on, um, I don't know, a good year, a little over a year that I was having these symptoms, the headaches. And it wasn't even the
What were
headaches.
the symptoms? So the headaches were like a pronounced, was the headache like there every day type of thing at that
Yeah,
point?
the headache was every day, but I started calling it head pressure. It was a different type of headache. I called it the head pressure. Then I could never quite describe it to anyone. Everyone would ask me like, "What's this head pressure?" And that's the one that scared me the most, was the head pressure. And I'm like, I can have a headache and head pressure at the same time, but I couldn't describe it to people. And um, and I had hyperacusis. That's another one that stayed on for weeks and months at a time. Every little noise I was overly sensitive to, and because I didn't like the symptoms, I would lay in bed. I ended up quitting the job, which in hindsight I didn't enjoy the job. And it all the symptoms came on the night before I was supposed to go back to work. So also looking back, I kind of think because I didn't want to go back to the job, I think that's why the symptoms came on then
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. That's a good insight.
Um, it was that and a lot of things that, when I came across this work, which wasn't until my life was whittled down to, not much. It was mostly me laying in bed, but feeling guilty because I had kids and wanted to work, even though I didn't want to go back to that job necessarily. I wanted to work. So,
So this was this you contacted COVID in the fall 2021, and now you're kind of fast forwarding. How long did this sort of go on for when you're really
um,
lying in bed and doing very little?
probably until the spring, because I got COVID around Thanksgiving, and it was probably until the spring. Um, the symptoms lasted longer than the spring, but until the spring, I was forcing myself to be bedridden and upset over the symptoms and spiraling. I stopped sleeping. I remember that was another main one: the hyperacusis, the head pressure, the headaches, and I couldn't sleep. Um, I couldn't get in my doctor because that's when COVID and long COVID was everywhere, so you couldn't get in your doctor. So I wasn't sleeping. And then I remember in January, I got into a neurologist before I could get into my regular physician, and um, he gave me a little something to help sleep. So maybe in January, February, I got a little better because I started sleeping. Um, but I still had all the other symptoms, and I was still scared. I was still Googling every single day. I remember my parents were like, "We want you to get better." And they were like trying to think of everything to help me get better. But they're like, "You have to help yourself. You're going to have to, still get on with your life, regardless of the symptoms." And of course, that made me mad. And I wanted to do that, and that's what I told myself I want to do. So I told myself, because I could be a perfectionist and a person that gets out there and figures this out, and I'm going to figure this out. I was nonstop Googling like everybody.
Yeah.
Um, So probably in spring, I was less laying in bed, but I still had the symptoms and I was mad. I still had the symptoms, but I was finally doing more, but I wasn't enjoying life. And I was still Googling and, um, you know, I didn't have my sense of what my life was before. I wasn't busy anymore. I wasn't working. I wasn't doing as much with the kids. It was like all consuming me, these symptoms. So that was making me feel sad and, um, all the other some things that go along with that that you hear in the stories. But I was forcing myself to do more, but looking back, I couldn't get over that hump because I was still panicked inside and still Googling and trying to figure out what I could do to beat long COVID. And then probably that fall of 2022, I was doing my normal Googling and I somehow came across a video of Raylan Engel.
Hmm.
Um, it was like a YouTube video, 10-minute video, or maybe it was a success story. It's hard to remember now. And I just remember laying there. It was evening time, and I thought, this is what I have. I have nervous system dysregulation or mind body or whatever you want to call it. Um, and also circle back around when I was in all these symptoms, part of what I was trying to do to fix myself was taking every supplement, um, whether it was turmeric or quercetin or I, I don't know what are all the things people try, all the supplements and Benadryl and um, I don't know all the supplements you could think of.
Sure. So you were trying whatever you could to try to, combat these symptoms.
Acupuncture, going to different doctors. Like by the spring, the doctors weren't as busy, and I was going to functional, non-functional medicine, just all those, just trying all that. And nothing was working, of course. I remember I had a basket of supplements, and I remember taking it to my mom's house, and I told her, I said, I don't want to take these supplements. And I remember saying, before I knew about the mind body work, I remember saying, with the basket in front of me, saying, this basket of supplements is scaring me. I don't want to take them. They're scaring me. I don't want to take them. But I didn't know if I should keep taking them or, when you're in it, you're in the spiral. But I remember having that conversation, and my mom's like, well, if they're scaring you, maybe, she kind of looked at some because she was a nurse and said, maybe stop these and slowly wean off others. And I mean, none of them were that do or die. I don't think I had to wean off any of them, but I just remember being scared. And then that's why when I saw a video of Raylan's, I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I have. Nothing else has
And
worked.
that was
And
about a year later or so from when this first started.
yeah, maybe a little over a year.
Okay.
Um, I was like, this is what I had. And then that's when I started. The new thing was looking at videos. That's when I came across some of your videos, a lot of the like daily 10-minute videos is what I was watching over and over, or the success stories. They were a little longer, like 45 to an hour videos, but I was watching videos over and over and trying to figure out what the mind body work was and what I needed to do. And because I knew wholeheartedly that's what I had done. That's what I had was mind body and started writing journals of what was happening around the time and kind of looking back at my childhood and different things and piece together things that I had always done well, but things I could improve and things around the time that, that was overwhelming me, the being overly making myself overly busy, being someone that wanted to do. And I don't know if you would say perfectionist, but I was someone that wanted to do my best at everything. I don't know. I go back and forth if it was perfectionism or being a doer. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. You could be a doer or somebody like a high achiever.
Yeah,
to
high achiever.
achieve, real high expectations.
Um, I was also very detail oriented. I remember I always had jobs where I had someone, a boss or someone that had ADHD. So they always heavily relied on me to be the detail oriented worker. And year after year, and then on top of being a mom, that was burning me out mentally.
Mhm.
Um, Emotionally, being a high achiever was emotionally burning me out. And I looked back and could realize a lot of that. It didn't happen overnight. It was, weeks and days and months of listening to these type of videos on the mind body work and the nervous system regulation, and I started piecing everything together on things that I needed to work on, or I don't know, I don't want to say work on, but um I don't know what's the right, maybe be better at.
Yeah, you kind of started to identify certain mind body things you were trying to shift or change, like
Yeah.
in some of these
um
things.
the typical mind body, and also I was the eldest daughter. um a lot of times, sometimes the firstborn and being a daughter, I fell in that mode as well. Um, and not only was I detail oriented, I was the firstborn, so I, took that role serious, and um, I just had a lot of the traits that were
Yes,
common
you
in my
recognize like these personality traits. You sounds like at that point you bought in that, hey, this is a mind body
yeah,
condition, right? Which is pretty big, right? To go from thinking this is long COVID. But I guess you saw what you saw enough of it that made sense to you that you were able to say,
yes,
this is not long COVID. This is my brain.
yeah, yeah. It definitely. I saw a lot of myself in a lot of the work and the videos, and it didn't, like I said, it didn't happen overnight, but it was a big relief to know this is part of my story. I wasn't sick. I wasn't broken like I thought for that whole year. And I thought I can't, at the time I was in my mid 40s, and I kept thinking like, I can't live the rest of my life with all these symptoms. But then when I came across the videos and was listening to your videos, and I remember I liked your videos because you lived in LA, and I always liked the indoor outdoor living in the sunny LA because we have family that live out there, so we go out there every year. And I remember that's why I was drawn to your videos.
Okay. I haven't heard that one before, but yeah,
Yeah,
sunny San
no.
Diego, LA. Yeah.
Because I felt like your videos had a good background, and you had the LA vibe or California
Okay.
vibe, and that's my favorite place to visit, and that's where we go every year. So I started listening to all your videos, and I remember if I had a topic I wanted to kind of learn more, I would Google the pain PT and anxiety or whatever it was, and I would just listen to the videos. The beginning I was listening to them all the time, but then I realized I couldn't do it all the time. I had to,
Sure. Yeah.
but
Okay. So
yeah,
you did some journaling. You were taking in information. You had already believed at this point. You started to shift, maybe tweak your personality a little bit, right, in the way you were dealing with things. And then how long was the process from the time, like in the fall, to when you finally started to feel significantly better or a lot better?
um, oh, I don't know. I've been asked that before. There wasn't a moment I knew I was better. It was probably 2 to 3, maybe 4 months.
Mhm. Okay, so sort of a
Um,
gradual lifting.
Gradual.
And at
Yeah,
that
very.
point, you were starting to go back to doing more things too, because you had said you've been kind of lying in bed and not doing as much.
Um, yeah, I started doing more things, and I started doing more things not out of fear. I realized whenever I kind of forced myself to get out of being in bed every day and feeling sad that I had long COVID, um, I would force myself to do things, but I was doing them so rigidly, so scared, um, just so intense. My body would be so tense, like, okay, I'm gonna I don't know what I have, but I'm going to go to my daughter or my son's sporting event. But I would go and I'd be so tense and scared to be
Yeah, so
there.
you're kind of like alluding to, I tell people like you're doing exposure training, you're trying to get back out, but that's good on one hand, but the other hand, you were still in a lot of fear as you were trying to do that.
Yes. Yeah, and that was what was I was forcing myself to do more and slowly doing more without being so scared. I mean, one day I had a mind shift that I don't even run up the stairs like I used to. I'd run up the stairs and say good night, kids, and I was like carefully going up the stairs and didn't realize I was doing that after I had all the head pressure and the headaches that came on. And I remember I wouldn't run and hop in the bed and lay my head down. I would always be so, I didn't want my head pressure or my headache to get worse. You know what I mean?
So you're
And
still
when
being,
I,
you noticed how cautious you were still being.
yeah, and but when I came across this work, I realized that's what made me realize that's how I was holding my body and it was not helping me. So that was one of the mind shifts was when I realized that, which to some people it's like, oh, well, duh, but I didn't realize all, like I said, I didn't know about this work or any of this. Um, so yeah, I didn't pay attention to how I was holding my body. And I don't know how much I did that before, but I definitely was ever since I got COVID and thought I had long COVID, I had started doing that with my body and being tense and so alert and hyper vigilant. Like I never considered myself a hyper vigilant person until after I got COVID. I was so hyper vigilant and it's a miserable state to be in.
Yeah,
But
it
when I
is.
found this work, it was I can let that hyper vigilant go. I thought I had to be hyper vigilant to get out of it, but when I found the work, I'm like I don't need to be hyper vigilant to get out of it, and that was a release to have that off
How
me.
did you, for people listening, how did you go about that in terms of, like you said, you sort of relinquishing this fear because you were going out? Did you start just trying to relax more? What did you do to kind of counter the hypervigilance or the guarding and protection in your body that you were noticing tentatively?
Um, well, now that I knew about this work, um, it made me be more mindful. And so it was more like, okay, I've got to make sure I'm mindful of how I am and whether that would take 50 times a day or 100 times a day or whatever. If I caught myself being mindful and tensed up and just feeling so scared and hypervigilant, I would say, I've got this. I'm not, I'm healthy, I'm strong. I remember I put my hand over my heart, which is something I learned from the videos, like, okay, I'm okay, I've got this. And
So
also
it's
kind
like
of that from,
self-talk. So you're using some
yeah.
self-talk, which is powerful, right? And you said, I'm healthy,
Mhm.
I'm strong, I got this, which is also a very powerful statement, right? Versus, I don't know if I got this, or "Oh, I hope
Yeah.
I got this." You were actually saying it very affirmatively. Sounds like.
Yeah. And it was that. And then I was like, am I going to have to talk to myself all the time? I was like, I don't want that to be my new life. But it was the more I listened to this recovery stories and the videos and educated myself on this work, I realized no. And then as I got slowly got better, it, I don't know, it just a lot of that stuff would just shift. I
Right,
wasn't hyper
right.
vigilant or
You kind
scared.
of worked, to decrease the fear, which is what you did. And then as it started shifting, I imagine you're like, well, I don't have to do the self-talk as much anymore.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I also, when I would do the self-talk, I was kinder to myself because the story I kind of word salad probably at the beginning of the video was I didn't realize some of the stuff growing up. I kind of thought I didn't think highly of myself because, I know this sounds silly, but because I felt not as pretty as some of my friends and it's my mom. My mom was super pretty and I had, like I said, I had the freckles. I kind of realized I had to not think of myself like, oh, I don't feel I had to tell myself I am worthy. I am I am, I guess maybe pretty, I don't know, whatever. I
Yeah,
had to,
that's powerful. So you are basically affirming your self-worth, affirming yourself instead of beating yourself up or being
yeah,
critical. So
yeah,
self-compassion, but very affirmative self-compassion.
yeah. Like I knew I always had friends. I always had, was a fun person and I was, you know, a mom and I was trying my best, but I didn't realize like I was telling myself mean things sometimes.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize all that until this work.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's great. That's a big piece for a lot of people. Just highlight that point. A lot of people don't realize how much they're putting themselves down or they're talking to themselves negatively or beating themselves up. And when you
Or
shift that, it's a big shift for people.
yeah, or trying to be so good at everything because that's what made me feel safe growing up was, oh, I felt less than, but I'll be good at everything. I'll be good at grades. I'll be good at sports. I'll be good and have friends. And a lot of that stuff was just naturally me and naturally what I wanted, but it was also I was being very hard on myself through all that. Like I liked playing sports, I liked getting good grades, but I took it to that next level. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. The perfectionism or people pleasing, those personality traits are used to, like you said, protect yourself or to try to make yourself feel better, right? As a way to
Mhm.
cope, but they don't really work at the end of the
Mm-mm.
day.
No, and that's when it finally peaked was when I got COVID and in my 40s, my body was like I was done doing all the doing everything and being internally mean to myself and yeah, it's like I'm enough. I'm enough and I'm worthy of having a good life and not putting the stress on myself. And that's what's why I wanted to do this video is I hadn't had anyone teach me any of this before and I had to self-teach myself, find it myself and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but man, I wish I would have known some of this stuff in my teenager years, you know?
I know, really, we should be teaching this. This should be in schools, and we could probably solve a lot of problems before they became problems later on.
Yeah, no, and that's why I wanted to do the video. It's not, of course, I want to help people but it's to get yeah, to help get this out there. But
Yeah, and it's a powerful story because you show that you had did done this all yourself, right? So you had found the resources, watched the videos, and you really did a lot of work yourself, which is kudos to you, right? So you didn't have any coaching or anything like that, right? You just kind of took what you could learn and then apply it to yourself, it sounds like.
I did go to just a regular counselor in the last couple years where I live, but it wasn't a much. They weren't a mind body counselor, it was just counselor.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and there was a counseling place down the road, and I probably went maybe first couple months every day, and then it's but yeah, mostly myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great job. So as you were coming out of it, right, you were doing more, you were using self-talk and self-compassion and reducing the fear. And then what happened? Just started getting a little better, and you were just getting back to life.
Yeah, getting a little better, getting a little better, getting back to life, enjoying the things. I had as as I found this work and was getting better, I had anxiety come on. So I wasn't fearful of the head pressure or the headaches or the sound sensitivity died down a lot, but then I had anxiety and um,
So it kind of switched into more of like a pure anxiety, like emotional anxiety.
I had some anxiety. So because I remember I would look up the pain PT and anxiety that I was listening to because I became less fearful of the head pressure, which was my main one. Um, and also I realized through all this, I kept wanting to find someone out there that had head pressure like me, even though I could never describe it accurately to any of my family or friends. But it was like I was seeking out someone that had head pressure. And but then when it's the head, when I found this work and I wasn't afraid of the head pressure, it was like, okay, you're not afraid of this, but you're not out of it. I'm going to give you anxiety. And but the anxiety I could relate to because it was the head pressure was to me an odd symptom. But when anxiety came, I was like, okay, now it's anxiety, and I could I could figure that one out, or I knew I could figure that one out.
So once it's switched, so, and go back to the beginning of your story when you read about long COVID, you read about persistent headaches, right? Or head stuff. So maybe that was, who knows, what got in your brain and you had fear about that and that started the head pressure one. But
Yeah.
once it became anxiety, that's good. So you didn't freak out about the anxiety. It sounds like you were able to handle that pretty good.
Yeah, it was the first, I wouldn't say the first time in my life, because looking back, I probably had some type of anxiety, but it was, um, I knew it was anxiety and I knew anxiety wasn't gonna, I could get over it and wasn't gonna kill me. Where the head pressure, I always thought, oh my gosh, is this, before I knew about this work, I thought, am I gonna have an aneurysm? Is this head pressure gonna, I always wondered if it was something more.
Yeah. Okay. So how long did the anxiety last?
Mm. Um, It probably lasted a couple months and it wouldn't be there every day, all day. A lot of times it would be in the evenings. And I don't know why. It would be in the evening time, kind of when I would slow down in the evening, so it would come on. And then now I just get it here and there, but I know what it is. And I know if I get a headache, I know what it is. I know it's my mind or my body trying to tell me something. And I know if I rest and or go to sleep the next day, it's going to be gone, or the day after that. I don't have fear around symptoms anymore. Um, I also noticed when I um, started learning and self-teaching myself about this work, I also realized I got off of all social media, and because every time I got on social media, I felt like everything on social media was some type of ad that was making me feel fearful or somehow related to symptoms. And it was either, it could be an ad that was making you feel fearful and thinking you had all these symptoms and you need to find the remedy, or it could be a helpful ad, but it was still like a fear ad. And I remember that's all I kept seeing on social media. And so I remember during all that, I got off of that as I was trying, you know, to work myself out of it. And that's when I said at the beginning, because I felt like I was super malleable. So I didn't like even seeing ads related to long COVID or symptoms because I felt like every ad was a fear-based ad.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of the fear, working through the anxiety fear for a lot of people, on the back end. So like when they're recovering, they're getting better, symptoms are gone down or gone away, is that existential fear, right? That something is going to trigger it, or and I think that's even something to work through, or people can work through as well. That hey, actually you're not as impressionable, malleable as you believe. But if we let that come in and take over, yes, it could, start to take over our brain again, that fear. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I don't know. Some of the people I've gotten to know um, through the mind body, like I've met a couple friends that we would chat, and I would always just say, just get off social media while
Yeah.
you're healing.
Yeah,
Um,
it's really helpful because you're trying to reduce all the fears you can, right? Not spike more and get that brain going more. That's great. So you got off social media, you had that anxiety towards the end, you got through that, and then things settled down after that, more or less, or
yeah. Like I said, I get a headache occasionally. I'll get a little bit of anxiety, you maybe an evening here and there, but I always know I'm going to go to sleep and wake up the next day and it's more than likely going to be gone, or there's something bothering me and maybe I'll write out some questions or write out some thoughts, and even if it doesn't go away, then I know it will go. I don't
yeah.
have the fear that it's here forever like I did before I knew about this work. I thought, I'm going to live with these symptoms forever, and that's going to be a hard life. And
Yeah, that's a great point. It's the fear is what can, well, fear can cause the symptoms, but it's what perpetuates the symptoms.
yeah,
So if you can
yeah,
get rid of
yeah,
the
it's,
fear, it's goes a long way.
yeah. And mine, looking back, once I knew that a lot of this is the fear of everything, I remember having conversations with my friends and family saying, I'm scared. And like I was scared of my supplements. And I I was saying it, but didn't know the whole picture at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
And
it's
I also, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
And I also started consistently moving my body. I've always enjoyed sports, but I was in a huge, um, I wasn't a person that was hugely into working out and this tons of physical activity every day, but I made sure I did something. I remember I always hated yoga, and now when I know, now I've come full circle, I realize I always hated yoga because that would force me to feel my body, and that I never knew about this work, so I was never doing that. And so I always hated yoga. So now it's not that I love yoga, but I walk and stretch and make sure I do something that I feel my body.
Yeah, great. So much more in touch with your body now, not being scared
Yeah.
of that.
Where before I would do yoga and be like, this is horrible. I can't do this. And I was so out of touch with the mind body concept that I hated yoga, but now I kind of like it.
Yeah, that's amazing to see that the silver linings that come out of the recovery, right? That it's not just that you got better, but you learn a lot about yourself, right? You shifted some things. You can do yoga now. You're more in touch with your body. So these are all the positives that come out of doing this work. It's
And
pretty
then
incredible.
I kind of mentioned that this all, everything kind of hit the fan when I had got COVID and got the long COVID, as you know. But we also kind of tied it to my daughter when she was a teenager, and I'm kind of glad it happened then because then that kind of changed some trajectory of some of the stuff. Me as a mother, I might have went down if I hadn't had this happen. Um, now she's a 16-year-old, and now I realize maybe some of the stuff I could have done, I could have been, let's get good grades. I could have continued, let's do every event, let's be in every club. But I don't do that now. I let them, of course, we want them to get good grades and put the effort in, but it's not the main thing. It's not do or die for me. And I don't know if that would have been my path, but it was kind of where the path was going when she became the teenager and all of my symptoms came on because I was kind of over empathizing with her. And you know, I was like, oh, wanting her to get the good grades, make every sport team play it, because that's what I did to myself. So I'm kind of glad it did happen when it happened because it changed some of that for me, how I was going to probably parent if this never happened.
Yeah, that's great. I really like how you took the learnings and the teachings and you really were able to apply it to yourself. Like it shows you it can be done, right? That you can shift and change and yourself
Yeah,
in a way. And that's really cool to see it. And you did it, yourself more or less with some help, right? Videos and
yeah,
understanding.
definitely the videos. And sometimes I'll still put on a video. A good recovery video is what you need sometimes.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Anything else you want to share before you go with the audience?
Because I know the audience, they're gonna want to know, or at least I always did, like exactly what they did. I also had the Calm app, and I would do their daily 10-minute meditations every day.
Okay, that's
Um,
good.
I don't now. I don't do it every day now, but for the first 2 to 3 months, I would always wake up and do that. I found those very helpful.
Good. Okay, so meditation, calming the brain. You mentioned some journaling, shifting your personality, self-talk. right? Reducing your fear, exposure training, getting back to life. Um, some counseling too. The counseling came at the same time or came later afterwards or
Probably a little later.
later? Okay.
I wanted to find, I wanted someone local that I could just drive to and be down the road, but there's not a lot of mind body people in Midwest Indiana, therapists. So I, like I said, I wanted to drive and be in person and go down the road. So I found someone that was good, and we chatted more broad topics, but we didn't get into, they weren't a mind body therapist.
Yeah.
I actually kind of shared some of my shifts with them. Not, I mean, they knew about some of it, but not like I was hoping.
Yeah. Yeah. It's still not mainstream really, right? It's kind of a specialty in a way, but
Mhm.
you're well on your way already getting better at that point. So
Yes, yes, definitely well under my way.
yeah,
Figure it all out.
great stuff, Steph. Well, that's an amazing story, and I really appreciate you being willing to come on and share it. I know a lot of people are shy about doing that or they don't want to do it, and but I think every story like yours just resonates. People are going to gain a lot from it. It
Yeah,
passes like you pass the torch on to somebody else who's trying to get through their stuff. And long COVID is definitely one of the things that we still see and we saw a lot of, especially during that time.
yeah, yeah,
Good stuff. Thank you so much for being here.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay.